So going back to the aim of ACT. So our whole goal is to increase psychological flexibility, which is just a fancy term for saying the ability to persist or change behavior in a way that includes the following three elements. Openness, so the ability to really contact your present moment experience, so what is happening for me in the here and now, right? Kind of that mindfulness element. Awareness, like noticing the role that thoughts and feelings, but taking it a step further, not just noticing, right, that mindfulness piece, but noticing when these thoughts or feelings might be controlling my life, either in a helpful way or in an unhelpful way. And when it's in an unhelpful way, then we're going to try to help you have more engagement and change actions that are more goal-driven or value-aligned, right? So we're wanting to really be aware of the role that thoughts and feelings are playing in controlling how we're showing up to our life. So why do we, focus on psychological flexibility? We really say that there's research that shows higher psychological flexibility is correlated with lower psychopathology and higher quality of life. So our whole goal is if we can have increase your psychological flexibility, then that's really going to help you have a higher quality of life. Something, I don't believe it's in the resources I've shared, but if anyone is interested, there is a really short measure, the acceptance and action questionnaire. It's like a 7 measure tool that I actually administer, like I give it in my intake paperwork. And it's a really quick tool to help you kind of assess where the client's psychological flexibility is at. There's also other tools that you can assess clients kind of in these different 6 processes that's going to give you a good sense of where you would actually need to intervene. All right, so let's go back to, let's take a stance of, from an ACT perspective, we say, humans suffer. Pain is a common human condition, right? And I say this often to clients. If you live long enough, you will experience pain, right? When that happens, what type of pain, the brand of pain will be unique to yourself. But that's just a common human experience, right? So if we think about 1 in 5 adults in the USA live with a mental illness. And then the WHO says 1 in 8 people in the world live with a mental health disorder. So if I think about that perspective, and I always kind of think about those are people who are meeting criteria for a mental health disorder, right? What if you think about like, what if there's one symptom that a client doesn't have that they don't meet criteria, or what if they don't have the timeline to say they meet criteria? They're still suffering and there's still pain, right? If we think about in 2015 to 2016, 45.8% of the US population was prescribed drugs in the past 30 days. For the age group from 20 to 59, antidepressants was the most commonly prescribed medication, right? So for this age group, which is actually probably the biggest age group that I work with millennials and Gen Zs. So, and I'm going to assume that a lot of you do as well. So this age group in 2015 to 2016, this group, their most commonly prescribed medication was antidepressants, which again, if you guys are all clinicians, this is no surprise to you, right? We're seeing it in our office. And the CDC says that every 11 minutes, someone passes away from suicide, right? Again, suffering is a common human condition. It's just part of the deal when you were born. And why do I say that, right? Why does ACT take this stance that humans suffer, and what influences people to suffer, right? We say that there's a couple different reasons why. One, thoughts have a huge role, right? Thoughts, I always say to my clients, listen, the way that our mind has evolved over years has been one of our greatest strengths. Think about it. I mean, the fact that we are all sitting here today, virtually in different parts of the country or the world, right? Many, many different minds had to come together to problem solve and figure that out. So on one end, thoughts have been one of our greatest strengths and has helped us evolve, right, and surpass other species. But in the same token, thoughts can also at times be our greatest enemy. It can often really trap us and keep us stuck, right? And we take the perspective maybe a little bit different from other modalities, that once a thought is in there, it's there, right? It's not, I'll often tell my clients, seems like you've done a lot of work not to have this thought or get rid of it, right? You've tried to challenge it. You've tried to distract. You've tried to maybe even like when you hear this thought and have a substance, and consume a substance, cut, whatever the case is. And it doesn't seem like you're not trying hard enough. Just seems like once that thought is in there, it's there, right? And sometimes I'll kind of think about the example to clients, and I'll encourage you guys for a moment. If I asked you for the next kind of 30 seconds, try really, really, really hard not to think of a warm, ooey gooey chocolate chip cookie, the one that's like the chocolate chips just melt and you can smell them kind of baking in the oven, right? If I encouraged you to try really, really, really hard not to think about it, what would happen, right? And I do this often with clients. And typically, sometimes I'll even time them. They'll say, sometimes they'll say like, no, the first thing I thought about was a chocolate chip cookie. Or they'll say, no, I know, I didn't. I wasn't thinking about it. And I'll ask them, okay, how did you know? How do you know you weren't thinking about it? Well, I started to think about the fact that I wasn't thinking about a chocolate chip cookie, right? So what we really take the perspective that once a thought is in there, it's there. And sometimes, right, we don't necessarily know what's going to trigger this thought to come up to mind, right? It can sometimes be like a really unexpected stimuli that will trigger this thought to come up. So for example, if let's say someone gets invited to a happy hour, but they kind of struggle with some social anxiety, but they really do want to go to this happy hour with their coworkers. So they make the decision to go. They walk into the bar, and once they are in the bar, they see their coworkers. They think that they spotted this person, and they see their coworkers kind of smiling and laughing. The automatic thought for this individual is, oh my gosh, they're making fun of me. I knew it. I knew I shouldn't have come. I knew this was a bad idea. Before they know it, now they're also thinking, oh my God, this is just like when I was in college and I had this group project and they invited me to go out, but they really didn't want me to go out. And oh my gosh, this reminds me when I was in middle school and those group of girls told me I was so weird and awkward, right? Before you know it, right, here you are standing in a bar and your mind is all the way to middle school you, right? So once a thought is in there, it's there, and certain things can bring it up to mind. The other thing that we really say when we kind of think about what contributes to suffering is that humans instinctively avoid pain. That's just like in our human nature and drive. If we think about even single-celled organisms will move away from pain. I'm going to say that one more time. Even single-celled organisms will move away from pain. So this instinctual desire to avoid pain is just programmed into how we evolved. And to a certain degree, that's kept us alive, right? But when we really start to I just want to make sure I'm not missing any chat. We really start to kind of combine these two things, right? Thoughts really start to trap us and can influence the way we show up to our life. And then we instinctually have this desire to move away from pain. Okay, so what happens? When we have a negative thought or an uncomfortable thought, and then maybe we have an uncomfortable feeling, right? Our mind sees that as these are problems to be solved and pain that I have to move away from, right? I have to do something to get rid of this. So my mind tries to apply this kind of formula of problem, solution. Problem, I have these negative thoughts and feelings. Solution, I have to do something to get rid of this experience. And listen, again, this problem solution formula works really, really well in the real world. So for instance, right, if, I don't know, like my house was a mess, maybe it is a mess, but let's say my house is a mess, right? That's a problem and solution. There's multiple things I could try to solve that. I can carve out time to clean it. I can ask my partner to pitch in. I can hire someone to come in, right? Problem, solution, very clear kind of relationship. But what about the problem of I lost my mom and there's grief, right? All the pain that shows up of losing someone I really care about. Like, what's the solution to that? And again, our mind and the way our mind has evolved in its program is going to try to do things to move away from this discomfort.